There's a bird sitting on a ledge outside your window right now, or waddling around a parking lot, or perched on a power line above your yard, bobbing its head as it walks, and your first reaction has probably been some version of the same thought: rats with wings, dirty, something to shoo away rather than look at twice. It's one of the only wild animals most people actively feel contempt for rather than fear, which is its own strange kind of reputation to carry. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why that reputation is mostly undeserved, what these birds are actually capable of, and why one of them once saved nearly 200 soldiers with nothing but its own 2 wings and a note tied to a broken leg. Myth number 1. Pigeons are basically flying disease machines, filthy and dangerous just to be near. Here's the actual public health picture. Pigeons can carry organisms linked to a small number of illnesses, histoplasmosis and cryptococcosis among them, both caused by organisms that grow in accumulated droppings rather than being carried in the bird's saliva or transmitted through a bite or a scratch. But the real risk comes almost entirely from prolonged exposure to large, dried accumulations of droppings, the kind found in an enclosed attic or under a roosting site that's built up undisturbed for months or years, disturbed and inhaled as airborne dust, usually in an occupational setting like cleaning out a barn, an old warehouse, or a long neglected loft. Casual contact, a pigeon on your balcony railing, walking near one in a park, sharing a sidewalk while it pecks at crumbs, carries a risk close to negligible, comparable to the everyday exposure risk from most other wild birds passing through a yard. If you do ever need to clean up a heavy buildup of droppings yourself, wetting the area down thoroughly before sweeping or scraping, and wearing a basic mask prevents the one realistic exposure pathway that actually matters: kicking dried spores into the air where they can be inhaled. The bird itself walking around your yard isn't the health hazard people assume it is. The accumulated mess in a space nobody's cleaned in years is the actual concern, and that's a location problem, not a pigeon problem. Myth number 2. Pigeons are mindless, one of the least intelligent birds you'll ever encounter. In 2011, researchers at the University of Otago in New Zealand ran an experiment originally designed to test abstract numerical reasoning in rhesus monkeys back in 1998, training pigeons to peck a series of images in ascending numerical order, starting with simple sets of 1, 2, and 3 objects of varying colors, shapes, and sizes, so the birds couldn't just be matching a visual pattern rather than an actual quantity. Once the birds had learned the underlying rule rather than just memorizing specific images, the researchers tested them on entirely new sets, going all the way up to 9 objects arranged in pairs they'd never seen ordered before. The pigeons succeeded at better than 70% accuracy, even on those novel, untrained combinations. And when the results were compared directly against the original rhesus monkey data, their performance was, in the researchers' own words, indistinguishable from that of the monkeys. Published in the journal Science, it was one of the first times an animal outside the primate family had been shown to grasp an abstract numerical rule at that level, upending an assumption researchers had held for decades about which animals were even capable of that kind of reasoning at all. Myth number 3. Pigeons don't recognize or care about anything. They're just reacting to food. Multiple studies have found that pigeons can reliably distinguish between individual human faces, not just human versus non-human, actual specific people, and adjust their behavior based on past experience with that person. Birds in these studies learned to approach individuals who had previously fed them and avoid or keep their distance from individuals who had previously chased or startled them, remembering that distinction over extended periods, sometimes weeks, and even recognizing the same person when they showed up wearing entirely different clothing, ruling out the possibility that the birds were simply keying in on a particular jacket or hat rather than the actual face and gait of the person underneath. The bird on your windowsill that seems to watch you specifically isn't imagining that relationship or reacting purely to habit. There's reasonable published evidence it may genuinely be keeping track of exactly who you are and adjusting how close it's willing to let you get based on what you did the last time you crossed paths. If this is already changing how you see the pigeon on your windowsill, hit that subscribe button right now. We cover the hidden science behind the animals in your own backyard every single week. And drop a comment below. Had you ever heard that pigeons could count before this video? Here's the detail almost nobody knows, and it's the reason this bird has a far better claim to genuine heroism than its reputation suggests. In October of 1918, during the closing weeks of the First World War, roughly 550 American soldiers, part of the 77th Division and later known as the Lost Battalion, found themselves surrounded by German forces in the Argonne Forest, cut off from radio contact and, worse, being accidentally shelled by their own side's artillery, unable to signal that the barrage was landing on their own position rather than the enemy's. With messenger after messenger shot down attempting to cross the lines, their commanding officer sent out his last remaining pigeon, a bird named Cher Ami, carrying a single desperate note asking American forces to stop the barrage. Cher Ami was shot almost immediately, hit through the breast, blinded in one eye, and left with a leg hanging on by little more than a tendon, and still flew 25 miles back to headquarters in about half an hour, message capsule intact, dangling from that same shattered leg the entire way. The barrage stopped. Roughly 194 surviving soldiers made it out alive as a direct result. The French government awarded Cher Ami the Croix de Guerre with Palm, one of the highest honors for battlefield bravery available at the time. And army medics fashioned the bird a small wooden leg for the recovery that followed, keeping the injured pigeon as comfortable as any wounded soldier under their care. That entire act of navigation, finding a single, specific location 25 miles away while wounded, under fire, at speed, relies on a homing ability built into ordinary pigeons that scientists still don't fully understand, believed to combine a sensitivity to the Earth's magnetic field with visual landmarks and even a sense of smell, precise enough that homing pigeons have been used for reliable long-distance message delivery for thousands of years across entirely different, unconnected civilizations, long before Cher Ami or either World War ever existed. So, What does any of this mean for the pigeons actually showing up in your yard rather than the ones in a museum exhibit or a research lab? If you're feeding them regularly, it's worth doing so in moderation, since heavy, consistent feeding is usually what drives the kind of overcrowded flocks that create the mess and noise complaints people associate with the species in the first place, rather than the birds themselves being inherently a nuisance at ordinary, natural population levels. Scattering less food less often and in a spot away from your immediate doorway or seating area tends to keep numbers at a level most people find perfectly manageable. If pigeons are roosting somewhere genuinely inconvenient, like a balcony, a roofline, or above a doorway, humane exclusion is the right tool, not poison and not anything designed to injure. Physical deterrents, like angled bird spikes or netting installed along a ledge, simply make the surface unusable for landing and roosting without harming any bird that lands nearby, and they keep working indefinitely once installed. Unlike anything chemical, since a pigeon that can't perch somewhere simply moves on to find a more suitable spot elsewhere on its own. What's worth actively avoiding is poison bait, which causes a slow, prolonged death, often affects other birds and scavengers that encounter a poisoned pigeon afterward, and does nothing to stop new birds from moving into the same now empty roosting spot shortly after, since the location itself, not any individual bird, is what's actually attracting them. One more thing worth knowing, since it explains why this bird ended up in nearly every city on Earth in the first place, and answers the last unspoken assumption behind most complaints about them, that they're some kind of invasive nuisance that doesn't belong here. Domestic and feral pigeons are all descended from the wild rock dove, a species humans domesticated more than 5,000 years ago, making it one of the oldest domesticated animals in recorded history, kept for food, for message delivery long before Cher Ami's era, and later for organized racing, valued and deliberately bred by nearly every major civilization that encountered it. Rock doves naturally nest on cliff ledges and rocky coastal outcrops, which is exactly why a building ledge, a bridge support, or a windowsill reads to a pigeon's instincts as functionally identical to the cliff face its ancestors have nested on for thousands of generations. The bird isn't an invasive species that snuck in uninvited. It's a domesticated animal brought into cities by humans on purpose, generation after generation, that simply never stopped following an ancient nesting instinct that happens to see modern architecture as just another cliff. Here's the thing worth sitting with. This is a bird carrying genuine mathematical ability on par with a primate, a documented capacity to recognize and remember individual people, a 5,000-year relationship with human civilization that predates almost every other domesticated animal, and a species with at least one member decorated for battlefield heroism that saved nearly 200 lives, and most people's entire relationship with it is trying to make it fly away faster. None of that means you have to invite a flock onto your balcony or stop it from roosting somewhere genuinely inconvenient. Exclusion with spikes or netting handles that humanely and permanently. It just means the next time one lands nearby and holds its ground, watching you a little too directly, it's worth remembering there might be a lot more going on behind that stare than you've ever given it credit for. If this changed the way you look at the pigeons in your own neighborhood, subscribe, because that's exactly what this channel is about. The hidden truth behind the animals you walk past every single day. If you learned something new today, leave a like too. It genuinely helps this channel keep making videos exactly like this one. Drop a comment right now. Did you know pigeons could recognize individual faces before watching this? I read every single one.